Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan is very often the first film to be mentioned when discussing the realities of the horrors of war on screen. But surely 1977's bonkers, ultra-violence-laden military masterpiece Cross of Iron perfectly conveys the absolute insanity of the Russian front. Don't believe me? Check this out. Thanks for clicking on. I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews. If you love classic movies of every kind, films from the golden age of Hollywood, cult classics, classic horror, modern classics, or if you just like using the word classics like I do, then please consider dropping a like, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notifications bell to keep up to date with all future episodes. And in this episode, we're going to chat about 1977's Cross of Iron and how, despite it essentially being 133 minutes of madness, it's absolutely one of cinema's essential war movies. It's 1943, and on a cold, muddy, war-torn Eastern Front, the retreating Germans attempt to fend off the advances from their Soviet enemy. The film opens with a squad of German soldiers led by the world-weary and anti-authoritarian Rolf Steiner, played by James Coburn, as they take out a Russian outpost in grisly fashion and take a young Soviet boy hostage. When they return to base, however, they discover they have a newly appointed senior officer, Commander Stransky, an upper-class coward played by Maximilian Shell, whose primary interest it is to earn himself the prestigious Iron Cross to impress his friends and family back home in Germany. Coburn and Shell's characters couldn't be more different and instantly take a dislike to one another, with things coming to a head after a visceral central battle where Shell's character claims he led a brave victory despite spending the entire skirmish cowering in his bunker. It's during this sense-assaulting central battle that Coburn's character is almost blown to smithereens. He suffers massive shell shock and ends up in a military hospital for a bizarre mid-film sequence where he romances a nurse and becomes depressed at the waste of war as he spends time with other soldiers, many with horrific injuries. It's an odd and surreal but welcome break in amongst the carnage. It's ultimately short-lived, unfortunately, as to the bemusement of his new lady friend, Coburn's true calling drags him back into the war zone to where he feels most at home, in amongst the carnage where the Iron Crosses grow. Arriving back from hospital, Steiner wanders directly into his cowardly captain's attempt to blackmail his way into winning the Iron Cross, going to great lengths, many of which put Steiner and his men in grave danger. It's during this midpoint that the characters get a rare bit of breathing space from the action, and some actual plot leaks into the film, but not for long.
Jesus Christ!
The cast is rounded out by James Mason's Colonel, who dislikes Steiner's methods but understands men like him are necessary in such awful and desperate times. And David Warner, who famously lost his head a year earlier in The Omen, plays his defeated, philosophising captain. Director Sam Peckinpah, reportedly going through bottle after bottle of booze on set, throws absolutely everything at this film. Tanks burst through walls, planes turn towns to rubble, and bodies of soldiers are tossed around in turrets of mud and smoke. Peckinpah, ringleader of such centre-bothering projects as The Wild Bunch, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, and the infamously uncomfortable to watch Straw Dogs, had at this point mastered the effect of cutting rapidly from real time to slow motion, sometimes to stress the dizzying atmosphere of a firefight, and sometimes to really focus on a moment in the action, a grenade being tossed at a tank, or bodies being smashed to bits by bullets. Cross of Iron's use of horrendous violence and breathtaking action are both its main selling points and its only real drawback. As an indication of how war really is hell, very few films can equal it, but as a dramatic story, it's admittedly very flimsy, with large portions of its runtime being essentially montages of bullets and explosions, which for a war movie is maybe the whole point. Taking into consideration the film was made over 4 decades ago, it still has the power to shock, surprise and subvert your expectations. An early small moral victory of releasing a young Russian child prisoner out into no man's land is tragically and disturbingly snatched away as his fellow countrymen open fire. And a scene deep into the film has the weary platoon stumble upon a barn full of female soldiers, but doesn't quite end up playing out the way you might expect. The film sits on the edge of being both pro and anti-war. There is the odd speech about defeating the enemy and returning home victorious to the fatherland, yet most of the characters throughout the film are clearly tired of war and of the fighting. Also, interestingly enough for a film featuring a German army, there's no mention of Nazis and no swastika waving, with even Maximilian Schell's proud character vocalising his disdain for the party and the Führer. It's pretty refreshing to see a war film that's stripped of Hollywood glamour and cheesy flag waving. Or even a real conclusion for that matter. The war in this film basically continuing on, the film only ending because the budget had run out. If Peckinpah had the finances, you can imagine the carnage going on and on and on. In a world of anything is possible CGI, it's refreshingly impressive to see practical effects on this scale. Real actors, real tanks, real locations, real explosions. Please check it out.
I'll show you how a Prussian officer can fight.
And I will show you the Iron Cross's grove.